Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Glad you could join me. I'm Scott Linden. My guest this week, a name you'll recognize. You're probably a big fan. This guy has written over 20 books on everything from grouse and quail hunting to conservation for kids. Tom Huggler joins me. It's been a long time since we talked, so we'll get caught up on everything that he's been up to from a creative and literary standpoint to hunting and bird dog handling tips and a little bit of everything else in between, including kind of some of the highlights of his career so far in the woods and in the field. So stick around for Tom Huggler. We also will introduce a new old feature. Yes, after the new Upland Nation Index survey came out, it was clear to me that we ought to talk more about dog training and handling, so we are resurrecting our Handle It segment. That'll be coming up towards the end of the show. And we'll find out what you're up to as well, where you're going, what you're doing, some news from the social media pages here at the Upland Nation, and of course Wing Shooting USA, the TV show. So it's all coming up, made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, and FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. So what you been up to? Well, I'm a little jealous. I'm not getting out quite as much. Lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I'm most jealous of all of you who are still hunting on dry, snow-free ground. We're training hard. The pigeons don't like it. I don't think Flick does either. You know those ice balls in his pads? You've had that problem. Well, maybe not you, Rashawn, down there, but everybody else has. But we're getting out and hunting the south-facing slopes quite often. The west-facing slopes, they're still dry and plenty of feed, lots of green up out there, especially on the chucker fields. So lots going on here. You are having a great time, and I am so jealous. Some congratulations are in order. Gregory Locklear, keep up the good work, my friend. You're doing a great job. You know what I mean. Michael Mapes at Second Chance Bird Dogs. Yeah, you're doing great work out there. Everybody, take a look at Second Chance Bird Dogs at Facebook. It's probably the most motivating grassroots bird dog adoption program I've ever learned about, so check it out. And Jim Keller, you remember Jim from a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Jim just won another English Springer Spaniel National Trial, so good on you, Jim, and thanks again for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. We're working hard on all sorts of things here. One of the things I got to get back to, I know lead is a challenge for me for a whole bunch of reasons, maybe for you too when you're shooting. Most of the time I don't need it, but I had an interesting example about why you need to be flexible when you're shooting, especially at distance. It was a windy, cold, snowy day. We're coming down an ugly draw with about a foot of snow on the ground when I turn around and there's Flick in the very bottom crease of that draw, on point, pointing directly uphill, up, that whole crease, just pointing straight up that crease. I'm 150 yards away, but I start stumbling and sliding over there, trying to be careful because underneath all that snow is, bowling ball size rocks. So the gun's open, like I said, trying to get over there, just counting the seconds, thinking any minute now in this kind of conditions, those birds, yeah, there they go. Luckily, they went straight down through the middle of that draw, right over Flick's head, but, 25 yards above him and about 40 yards from me. I had the ammo, I had the chokes. Did I have the distance? Yeah. Did I remember to put some lead? And, if you shoot clays, you've heard the term, man, I rode that target too much, or I didn't ride that target enough. Well, I rode that target just enough. That bird dropped like a stone, not 10 yards from Flick. Heck, that's hardly even a retrieve. I didn't have to tell him to do it. He was pretty darn proud of himself. Brought that thing back with a big pile of snow on the top of his nose. Where's the camera when you need it? Good boy, Flick. And remember, sometimes lead is a good thing. Speaking of that, our good friends at the Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School have some advice for you in that regard. You want to learn more about their shooting school, go to midvalleyclays.com. Of course, they got a pro shop. They got an incredible assortment of guns and can get just about anything you need, even if nobody else can. But today we're talking about shooting instruction. So if you're ever in Western Oregon or close enough to get there, Vandy and Dave and the crew there of NSCA instructors can probably help you in one or more ways. I know they help me. They help my buddy Tom. They help people every day with their shooting techniques and strategies. Learn more about Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School and their instructional capabilities at midvalleyclays.com. And as I've said before, another way to improve your shooting overnight is to put some great choke tubes in there. Yeah, choke tubes and the pattern they create will improve your shooting without any other changes. You know, until you pattern your own shotgun, you don't realize how important that is. And Trulock Chokes does know. Learn more at trulockchokes.com. Take a look at all of the information. They're a great resource if you're thinking about it. Just got another request on the Upland Nation Index at the bottom there for help with choke tubes, and that was the first thing I mentioned. You know, they all carry a lifetime warranty. If anything goes sideways on a Trulock choke, just send it back, and they'll replace it at no charge. How many companies will still do that? TrulockChokes.com. Well, that's a propitious opening there. It's been so long. In fact, it's been almost 3 years since I talked with Tom Huggler. Tom Huggler is a name you recognize from a magazine article, byline, book cover. He's done it all. This guy was the pioneer in our world when it comes to educational, informational videos. Tom Huggler joins me again on the Upland Nation podcast. Tom, great to hear your voice again.
Well, thanks, Scott. Good to be back on with you. Has it really been 3 years?
It's scary to think that, number one, it's scary to think the year 2022 just kind of whizzed by. Where'd it go? You know? But
I don't know. But I'll tell you, Einstein was right. The older we grow, the faster time goes. And I'm finding that to be true. Yeah,
and we could talk all day about that and then complain about kids today, but we're not going to do either of those things. Okay. I promise. But we are going to talk about the fun stuff. And let me just give people a little bit more background on you. You've written like 20 books on everything from grouse hunting and then quail hunting to conservation for kids and a whole bunch of fishing stuff too. But then you went ahead and did something that I really appreciate, because it really did get me motivated in a lot of ways when I was much younger and learning a lot more. Now I know everything, so it doesn't matter. But back then I learned so much from your videos and enjoyed the heck out of all of those. And not only did I do, but so many other people did, and you won so many awards with this stuff. Tell us all something about Tom Huggler that we might not know.
Oh gosh, I don't like talking about myself that much, but let me. I got to think about that one, Scott. What you don't know about Tom Huggler? Whoa. Well, I guess I'll tell you that I'm 77 years old, and that has changed how I hunt, where I hunt, and how often I hunt. It hasn't changed who I hunt with, including my dogs, but it has changed things. I've slowed down. You know, I used to, they used to call me Death March Huggler, because I'd take guys out to aspen clear cuts where there's all kinds of slash in the Upper Peninsula. And by that, I mean all the tops and drops, all the stuff they leave on the floor of the forest. And, we'd plow through that stuff. It was just called hunting. But I had, little by little, I had people who would say, well, I'm going to hunt with so-and-so today, not with Tom. But I don't hunt like that anymore. And you know what, Scott? I found that I move as many birds, not me, but my dogs, when I slow down. Dogs hunt the pace that you set. And if you want to see as many birds and don't want to wear yourself out, walk slower. Let the dog do the job.
I can't agree more, and not because I'm looking for excuses too, but it's absolutely true. The dog is a direct reflection, a mirror image of what we do, isn't he?
He is. He really is. And the older I grow, the more I learn that. And my dogs teach me more than I could ever teach them.
Hey, what a great name. I did write that book. Never mind.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. By the way, available in paperback now under a different title, but that's another story. This is a story about Tom Huggler. Tom, I got to tell you, you're absolutely right in that regard. And I was reminded of it again, not 4 or 5 days ago. I was up on a hilltop in northern Nevada, and and I was looking around thinking, it took me an hour to get up here. Now I can load the gun and we can go hunting. But the hour that it took to get up there, it was not the frantic death march climb that it usually was. I took my time and I enjoyed the scenery, and I realized part of that was because I was hunting by myself.
Yeah, you probably saw things that you wouldn't have seen had you charged up the Art Attack Hill. It would have, you have a different perspective when you slow down. You really do, and you see the nuances, the birds in the forest, the flow of habitat, how it changes from segment to segment. You look at the compromises between habitat. They don't always hold birds, but you look at them and you think of them. And the same thing with your dog. If your mind's not on balancing the checkbook, if it's on hunting, which it should be, and you slow down, you will see things. You will appreciate it more. You really will. And you'll feel better at the end because you won't be so pooped out you can't stay up till 9 o'clock and watch your favorite program.
Well, you are a night owl.
Well, 9 o'clock. That's kind of my limit these days.
I hear you, especially if you're getting up again the next morning for another hunt.
You got it.
I got a friend who... He still waters his dog in a little collapsible plastic bowl.
Okay.
So to get at the bowl, he has to take his vest off, reach deep down into the pack part of it, and then find some water and pour it in there. And I keep thinking, man, you're wasting time. We could be climbing. Oh, wait a minute. What a great idea. Every 45 minutes, this guy takes a moment and he looks around and admires the view and lets his dog get a little water, and it changes the tempo of the hunt, the rhythm of the hunt. It does,
yeah. Those moments are when you replenish, refresh, and reallocate your time. And, I look at the watch as much as anybody, but when I'm hunting, it has an odd way of suspending time for me, and that's why I'm usually late if I go out and tell somebody I'll be back at 5, and they say, it's 6:30 and the pork chops are raw. I mean, they're dry. Well, sorry about that.
Some priorities are greater than others. Isn't that the truth? Well, I got to talk about this because I'm not sure if I remember right or not, but do you share a background in education as do I and our mutual friend, Steve Smith?
Yes, yeah, I did. I was a high school English teacher for 14 years. I left that job finally in 1982. So for 40 years, I've been a full-time freelancer. But you know what? Once a teacher, always a teacher. I can't get that out of my system.
I
So
agree.
I have to watch it, or my family says, "Stop lecturing, Dad. We're here to read the museum notes, not to hear you talk about it."
Well,
So,
and the good part of that is when you write something or you produce a video that is actually of value to the recipients. That's how I have to look at it. And it sounds like you're motivated by the same thing.
well, that's the whole purpose in doing it.
Yeah.
It is to share an experience, to share some research, to share a joke, but you're sharing stuff. And along the way, you're teaching, whether you know it or not, you're teaching people. It could be nuanced. It could be the little things that you mention and then walk past, don't dwell on it, but people pick up on things. And those listening today I don't know your audience that well, but I'm sure they're looking for tips. They're looking for experiences. They're looking for things that they can take to the bank and make them a better hunter and a more enjoyable hunter.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's the motivation for you and for me and for a lot of other folks in our world, rather than, and the reason I got into TV, and I don't want to dwell on it, but the reason I got into TV was because I got tired of watching people stand in front of the camera and say, "Look at me, look at me, look at me."
Yeah, yeah. The old grip and grin photos.
Yeah.
Hold that fish higher so we don't see your face, we see the fish. You know how that goes.
Yeah, I do. So you've had some challenges, but you've been out and you've been hunting. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that and a whole bunch more. I figure we'll talk, first about some of the interesting hunts you've had. This year, we'll talk about that, but then we'll talk about some of the stuff that just pops to the top of the list over your career of so many incredible hunts. So let's start with that. Could you narrow it down to 2 or 3, I guess, for lack of a better term, bucket list hunts you've done?
Well, yeah. Why don't we start with the most memorable hunt? And that's really hard because there have been so many.
Yeah.
But the one hunt that I'll never repeat and wish I could was a hunt to Crimea in the Ukraine.
Oh, my.
And, yeah, that was 1998. I went out there with several friends. We wanted to hunt Eurasian woodcock. Woodcock are my favorite bird. They always have been. But I had never seen a Eurasian woodcock, and I wanted to. And I learned through research that many of them, they're migratory, just like the American woodcock. Sure. And many of them filter through Ukraine and end up in the Crimea Peninsula, the southern bottom of Ukraine, where all that stuff's going on with Russia. And this is why I'll never be able to go back. I wouldn't want to go back because it wouldn't look the same. Oh, yeah. When I saw it, it was beautiful country. And but the woodcock gather down there, Scott, because then they fly across the Black Sea.
Oh.
And that's 150 miles. And they do that to, find food elsewhere and seek a warmer climate. And so they end up in northern Turkey, a lot of them. And I've never been to Turkey, but I have been to the Crimea. And we hunted there most successfully. I was accompanied by friends of mine, one of whom was Al Stewart. He's a just retired Michigan DNR wildlife biologist who's a hardcore hunter, and he wanted to go. And so we included him. And he and I had, I think, probably the most, well, maybe not the hardest hunt physically, but certainly it was a challenge. And a little backstory on this. When we got to Ukraine, we flew into Kiev, and then we took a train to Simferopol, which is the main city in Crimea. It's about a 600-mile train ride. Okay, we got down there, and we all had jet lag. We were, travel weary, and we got our guides, and there were a couple of fellows that one was 35, maybe 40. The other was over 40. And those guys walked our legs off.
Oh, yeah.
And the terrain down there, it's it's high country for me. I live in Michigan, where, you know, if we get a high hill here, we call it a mountain. We
Yeah.
tend to
Yeah.
ski. But over there, this terrain was varying between 2,500 and 3,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get nosebleed or anything like that, but we weren't acclimated to that kind
Yeah.
of altitude. And our guides pushed us. They kept kind of running ahead of us. And I thought, what is going on here? We can't keep up with you guys. You're almost sprinting through the woods. So that night, through translation, we asked, why they hunt like this? And the translator said, well, they had never seen American hunters. They had never seen any hunter wearing orange.
Uh-huh.
And they were afraid that you guys might shoot them, like the Italians tried to do.
Oh, gross.
I mean, one of them said, an Italian shot me, and that's why I run out front. I don't know if I trust you guys.
Oh, God.
Well, you know, by day 2, they trusted us, and they loved the way we hunted, and they slowed their pace, and we got into birds, lots of birds. The hardest hunt of that whole trip was one that Al Stewart and I took on the last day. Most of the guys in our group had blisters, boot blisters.
Yeah.
One guy popped a knee. There was something wrong with his leg, and he couldn't walk.
Oh, man.
Another guy was a banker from Minneapolis. He was really too old for this kind of hunting. So Al Stewart and I was in my early 50s. He was in his early 40s. And the guides said, okay, we're going to go to a spot in here that we think you and Al can handle. It's a arduous hike in, it's a long way out, it's tough terrain, but we think Huggler and Al Stewart can handle that. So we went in, and to the best of my recollection, I think they said we walked 18 miles that day. And the woodcock hunting was fabulous. They took us into a knoll, inaccessible by roads, and that's where the woodcock had gathered. And if I'm going to have checked my notes on this, Scott, but I think Al and I, we ended up shooting 18 woodcock, and I can't remember how many we flushed, but that was just a trip of a lifetime, and it's something I'll never repeat, which is why it's probably my most memorable hunt.
Well, you know, there's something to be said for both aspects of that. You did it. It was a peak experience, and knowing you'll probably never do it again probably adds 10% to that.
At least 10%. It might even add more.
Yeah.
It's unmeasurable, the enjoyment that trip was. The people, the food, everything about it, and there was no downside to any of it. We hunted behind an Irish setter and an English setter. The Irish was 9 years old. The English had born 6 litters, if I remember this right, and those dogs hunted as hard as their owners did. I couldn't believe the stamina of these dogs, and they never fed them anything. They just, I don't know, it was crazy. They were in shape, they hunted hard, they were good hunting dogs, and they certainly earned my respect, my admiration. They were terrific, along with our guides. Good people.
You're lucky. What an incredible experience. I almost had the polar opposite of that in the Kamchatka Peninsula one year, but that's a story for another time on another subject. You said woodcock is your favorite bird, whether it's Eurasian or it's what do we call them over here?
Just American.
Woodcock. Okay, yeah, that would make sense.
There's only 2 species in the world.
Yeah. And so the Eurasians, some of those are coming from Iceland and England and passing through those countries as well. But what is it about that bird? You know, a lot of people would say, too small, too hard walk, whatever it is. What do you love so much about woodcock?
Well, they're the only game bird that we hunt with pointing dogs.
Yeah.
They're the only game bird that's migratory, except for mourning doves, which we don't hunt with pointing dogs.
Yep.
So there's something about woodcock that is always a mystery. Where was he last night? Where is he going today or tomorrow? And how far does he go? Where's he from? You know, they only lay 4 eggs, and typically the hatchlings are either male or female.
Yeah.
That's an odd thing about woodcock. The other reason I love woodcock is they're a put together bird.
Designed by committee.
Well, kind of, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of legends about the woodcock. There's a tribe of Indian, I think it's Eastern Indian, maybe Iroquois, that believed the woodcock was put together by Manitou from the leftover parts of other birds he created. And that's why it's got this goofy bill that's 4 inches long if it's a big female. And it's got this eyes bulging on top of his head. They're the only bird, I think, game bird at least, that can see almost 360 because of the position of their eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Their ears are down at the base of the bill, which provides excellent hearing. And they have to have hearing because they listen for earthworms. Mm-hmm. Could be 2, 3, 4 inches under in the soil. And they can hear those things and pinpoint them. And that's what they live on. In fact, when woodcock are migrating, I'm told they have to eat their own weight in invertebrates, mainly earthworms, every 24 hours.
That's a goal I've aspired to myself, but nobody else would appreciate it.
Yeah,
wow.
Well, those are just some of the oddities about woodcock. The rural Britons used to believe in the summer when they seemed to disappear that they were flying to the moon and coming back in time for hunting season. It's just crazy. There's another legend about woodcock that the reason it has 3 dark bands across its head, mm-hmm. is because the Virgin Mary felt so sorry for this ugly little bird that she used her 3 fingers to bless it.
I love it.
And it burned into the bird's feathers on the top of his head. I just love those kind of stories. They add to the mystique.
You know, and I'm glad you're talking about this stuff because we don't talk. We get so darn practical so often that we forget about this stuff. And it's fascinating. Yeah, and you're right though. They behave almost as well as valley quail for a pointing dog.
What you mean as far as the holding?
Yes.
Well, the valley quail I hunted in Nevada didn't hold for me.
Well, you got to break up the covey first, Tom. Come with me sometime.
You are right. Yeah. And those coveys can be huge. I remember seeing coveys of 60 birds or more when I hunted there near Fallon, Nevada, many years ago now. But they're a wonderful bird. You know, anything that flies and that a dog points is really fun to hunt. And it doesn't matter what it is. I've hunted all the species of grouse and all the species of quail in North America. And I can't tell you there's one that I favor more than another. They're all individual, beautiful birds, challenging to hunt, tasty to eat, and just well worth going after.
Absolutely. That's Tom Huggler, author, video producer, magazine writer. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Tom, I hesitate to ask you this, but you have a much better memory than me. If I had to narrow it down to 1 or 2, I don't think I could do it. But what has been the wackiest, craziest, off-the-rails bird hunt you've ever been on?
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I'll try to keep this one shorter. It's South Dakota, 1980. The first time I went out there, and I had a young setter, a field trial dog, my very first setter. She was about 2 or 3 years old. Her name was Brinka. And so she was a high-strung dog. As I said, she was field trial stock. And so I put her on a plane in Flint, Michigan, and we were on a milk run up and down, all the way to Mitchell, South Dakota.
Yes.
Well, the big stop was at O'Hare International in Chicago. And I went down to the hole to see about my dog because there was a long layover there. No dog. She didn't make it on the flight.
Oh, man.
And what the heck happened here, you know? And so I kind of panicked, and there's nothing I could do. Well, I got back on the plane and we ended up in Mitchell, South Dakota, and I had no dog. And so I spent a sleepless night in a motel room waiting for the next day's flight to arrive. And thank gosh it had my dog aboard.
Wow.
So I'm back in business, right? But I'm a day behind the hunt where other friends were staying in Platte, South Dakota and shooting birds, and I wasn't there. So I needed to hustle over there. Well, I rented a car. I guess you could call it a car. I think it was $18 a day and 18 cents a mile. But anyway, this car, it burned as much oil as it did gas.
Oh, wow.
It was stopping constantly. And because of all of that and the craziness of this trip, I ended up putting a brand new LL Bean shooting jacket on the roof and drove off. So somebody got a new $80 coat out of it. Yeah. And I ended up finally in Platte. And so I took Brinka hunting. Well, she was so wound up. Several of us went down this strip of Sudan grass that the farmer had left intact. He didn't harvest it. And if you know anything about strip cover and pheasants, they're going to run to the other end. And especially if they're pushed by a dog that's gone berserk. And my dog was so pent up, she just raced to the end of that thing, flushed all the birds. It took me 4 hours to get her back.
Oh,
and
wow.
I knew where she was. Well, I knew where she was because I could see clouds of pheasants busting loose out of the sorghum and out of the not Milo, but the soybeans and everything else. And anyway, that hunt was bummed. So I had to put her back in a kennel. I mean, she was ruining the hunt.
Yeah.
And the hunt ended up okay. That 8 of us shot 120 ringnecks.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It's 5 days times 3, 15 per hunter, times 8. I believe is 120. Math is not my strong point. English is.
Teacher, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so that was the weirdest, craziest hunt that I can recall. There have been plenty of other nutty hunts, but this one was, this one was crazy.
I can relate to 3/4 of that. We never lost a dog, but we've lost television cameras, shotguns, tripods.
Yeah.
None of those things are as life-changing or as aggravating as losing a dog. So I feel for you there. Even a bad dog, and I'm not saying she was, but well, I'm glad the story had a happy ending, and you could have. You probably realize this. It could have been worse.
Oh, it could have, sure. Yeah. I could have not shot any birds.
Yeah.
But, the best part about Brinka was the litters that she threw.
Mm.
I got 2 beautiful litters out of her and 2 wonderful dogs, one of whom was my all-time favorite, and that's Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
Oh, my, she turned into a real champion.
Love it. Well, good for you. I mean, you've been a fan of that breed for quite a while. Is there any reason that you particularly fall for those dogs?
Yeah, there is. It's the tail as much as anything. That musketeer's hat, that feathered plume when they're on point, that's either straight up or straight out.
Yeah.
And when it's backlit by the sun, oh my gosh, there's nothing more beautiful in the canine world than an English setter on point, backlighted by the sun.
I have a hard time arguing with that. I think you're absolutely right. So take a moment, have a sip of coffee. That's Tom Huggler. I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Tom will be back with us in just a moment. We'll also have that Handle It dog training segment coming up. First, a word from sageandbreaker.com. Sage, S-A-G-E, and Breaker, B-R-A-K-E-R, just like it sounds. Just got the word from Fred Bohm over there. The Christmas gun cleaning combo is now on the market. This is a great, I want to say starter kit, but it's an all-in-one kit for the shotgunners on your Christmas list, from a shotgun gun mat to some CLP spray for cleaning, lubricating, and protecting firearms part tray, a brush and pick tool roll, very handy, firearm cleaning swabs, and a gun cleaning cloth. Usually $407 now, $355. Learn about all of the new stuff coming down. There's more coming very soon. Fred said it's just about ready. Get on the mailing list at sageandbreaker.com. Tom Huggler, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. Sure enjoying this and getting caught up. There are so many things that I'd love to talk with you about. Have you, because I can share some of the same experiences, but you have so many more and so many more interesting ones. Have you ever had a challenging hunting buddy that maybe tested you in one way or another? Can you limit it down to a couple?
I don't hunt alone very often. Mm-hmm. I love to hunt alone, but I also enjoy hunting with others. Yeah. And there was one fella who, he couldn't shut his mouth. He kept talking to my dogs, which is a no-no. You don't talk to somebody else's dog. You hunt quietly. That's how you get closer to birds. Now, I know you got a bell on the most pointing breeds, and they'll make noise, but that doesn't seem to scare pheasants or quail. But sometimes loud, car doors slamming and people hollering at their dogs and stuff, that just drives them off out of range. So this fella just wouldn't be quiet, and so he was like a cheerleader. Hey, good point there, buddy. Let's do that again. And or he'd be directing my dog. Hunt over here. You missed the spot. You just, what? I had a trainer once tell me, Scott, I asked him, I said, what's the most important tool a hunting dog trainer can have? I figured he'd say an e-collar. You know what he said? Duct tape.
I love it.
I said, duct tape? Yeah, he said, you tear off a piece about 4 by 6 inches. Use your imagination, Tom. And I did. It wasn't me that was blabbing. It was somebody else. And I wish I had duct tape that day.
Yeah. So true. Been there and done that. I find myself wanting to chime in too often, and I bite my tongue. But there are times when you just want to, you do appreciate hunting by yourself, and that's one reason right there. On top of the fact that you can slow down a little bit. So,
true, and when you hunt with someone else's dog, and you own dogs and train dogs and work with your own dog, it's hard to shut your mouth. You want to say things. And at the very least, say things that are complimentary. Not, your dog missed that. How come you didn't retrieve that bird all the way? Lay off the insults. And if you have to say anything, make sure it's something positive.
Yeah, I wrote a piece once years ago, and I said, if your dog was so much better, we'd be hunting with him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, you got it.
So that kind of shuts them up. Although if you have to shut up your hunting buddy, they probably ought not be a hunting buddy anymore.
Yeah, that's part of etiquette in the field. And it's important that you follow etiquette in the field. And that probably is primarily the most important thing. How you deal with others' dogs, including your own, though, too.
Yeah. I wrote another piece on stealth in the field a year or so ago that really kind of echoes what you just said. There are very few reasons we should have to say anything. Once we're in the field and hunting, there's the train tracks that might be over there on the side, or there's the freeway on the other side, or there's some cliff or whatever. But other than that, can you think of any other, good reasons to be yelling and screaming, or even using your whistle once in a while? There are just very few.
Yeah, I don't use a whistle anymore. The last dog I had trained, it was trained with the silent method, the silent command system, and that's the one perfected by the Smiths. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I got to interrupt myself. I'm watching a dozen wild turkeys walk across my front yard.
Ah,
Oh,
where's a
I live
shotgun
back
when
in the
you need
woods. I live
it?
back in the woods, and we see wildlife all the time, but that's just grand. Anyway,
Are they
uh,
are they coming in to feed? Are you putting something out for them, Tom?
no, no, I
Yeah,
don't need to. I
yeah,
live on 27 acres, and there's lots of food out there.
yeah,
And this place is, in a sense, a sanctuary.
yeah,
It's in a rural part of Michigan, and where my neighbors are the three C's: cows, corn, and combines.
yeah,
And there's not many people, and these birds just come in here, and deer too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and none of them is a gobbler, though.
Ah,
Yes, there is. There's one following up. He's the gobbler. I'll get him next spring.
there you go. I love it.
We'll let him go through the winter.
Well, good for you. So what?
Hmm.
We were talking about being stealthy and the silent command method, which by the way, there's something else in that I'll talk about next. But go ahead.
Well, I
So
was just going to say, based on, I'm picking up on something you said, the articles you've written. I write a column called Eastern Encounters for
yeah,
Pointing
yeah.
Dog Journal. I've done it for 30 years. And I wrote a column one time. I titled it Rethinking Prattle and Pace. Rethinking Prattle and Pace. And it went into the same thing that you, I assume, went into and that we're talking about. Be quiet, slow down, shoot birds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. By the way, I'm honored to be your Western counterpart periodically in that magazine. And
Yeah, I've been reading your column,
and-
Western Wings. You
yeah.
you took over from Ben Williams, I recall.
Yeah, and it's been fun because I get to talk about the stuff I really love, which is, the stuff west of the Mississippi or west of the Rockies in large part. But
Yeah, yeah.
but Ronnie Smith in particular has become a good friend, and Ronnie and Suzanne and Love, his wife, have really made a big deal the last few years about getting your dog calmed down before
Hmm.
you do virtually anything, from training a new drill to starting a hunt. And boy, oh boy, has that hit home with me. I have a wire hair, so of course it's crazy. So I do everything I can so that when we start, they are focused and just a little bit dialed down. Do you have to do that with your setters?
It's a good question. I never have done that. Well, I mean, I talk to them and pet them, and I don't turn them loose if they're going crazy, running circles around me.
Yeah.
I'll get another dog.
Yeah.
But one thing I picked up on, it was from a trainer named Tim Fox, and he trained Reagan, my current dog, my current setter. And I went over to watch him and see how he did. And he uses a silent command system. And the first thing he does is he takes his dogs out for the day, and then he puts them on a chain.
Yeah.
Every dog is parked on a chain, can't run more than 5 feet, probably less than that.
Yeah.
And that calms him down. When he's out training another dog, eventually the ones that yap and jump all over the place, they just settle down and get on their haunches, and that's when he takes that dog out for training. So there is something to be said for it, for sure.
Yeah. In fact, what it does is it teaches them to a degree, at least. I'm no expert on this, but that they have to be calm. They can't win. You can never win an argument with a chain.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Well,
And it just has a way of settling them down.
Yeah,
Eventually,
absolutely.
they're like a kid throwing a tantrum. And
yeah.
you know what? I'm not getting any mileage out of this. Mom's ignoring me, and I've been at it 10 minutes. I think I'll just go to bed.
Yeah. Switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about ruffed grouse because that's a subject I don't talk about enough. And I wish I could, but you do. Heck, you've written books on the topic. You've done a video on the topic. If you were talking to a bunch of people, and they're out there right now listening to this, who want to be better grouse hunters, ruffed grouse hunters, let's start with some of the more fundamental stuff that they may not even think about that could improve their hunting.
Well, first, grouse are the ultimate game bird. They're the most challenging. And if you hunt them without a dog, you can. I knew a guy from New York who shot 600 grouse over a lifetime of hunting them, and he never owned a dog.
Yeah.
So they can be hunted that way. But my advice, your listeners, are start with a good dog.
Yeah.
If you're hunting any bird without a dog, you're missing a huge part of the drama. In fact, to my mind, the most important drama after the bird itself. And so a dog that's well trained will know how to handle grouse. Grouse run these days, at least the ones east of the Mississippi do.
Yeah.
And you have to find a dog that will creep on grouse, relocate when he needs to, not bust the bird. And the bird is easy to bust because they're on a hair trigger. The ones here, anyway.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I once had a dog. It was a Brittany, a beautiful little dog. He came out of a game farm, had something like 5,000 birds shot over him when I bought him. And I bought him because I needed a trained dog, and he was affordable. I had lost Macbeth, my setter, way back in 1989, and I was going out throughout the country to hunt birds, so I needed a finished dog. So I bought this one, and this dog was so smart. He literally he'd get on a scent, and he'd run out in front and herd the bird back to me.
Yeah.
And I've only seen that a couple times in my lifetime. And he was one dog I owned that did that. So,
that is, we joke about it, especially hunting pheasants in corn, whether it's cut or not. And, the birds will drive the dog nuts, just to, staying right ahead of him like two north ends of a magnet. They never get any closer than that. And every once in a while, some guy will brag about his dog knowing how to do that, to head him off at the pass. Do you think he learned that on all those preserve birds?
It's hard to say. I don't know if that's instinct taking over or if it's intelligence saying, I know what you need, Mr. Hunter. You own me, but I own you, and I'm going to help you get a bird, and this is how. I really can't answer that.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah. You just said something that reminds me of a great song and some other aspects of a lyric in a great song by Guy Clark. Guy Clark is probably the most legendary Americana songwriter in the universe. And once he said, sometimes the song writes you. And that's what your dog is doing. He's training you there, but he's figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what happens there. There's something else you can do with the dog to help him hunt, especially running birds like pheasants and these days grouse. And that is apply something called stop to race. I learned this from Jim Marty, who's passed away now. He was a great trainer from Baldwin, North Dakota, and he just trained all kinds of dogs. But what he'd do with a pheasant hunting dog was train it so that the dog would take off, get on a point, and instead of deciding he's going to run to the next point when the bird is gone, Marty would go up and train the dog to whoa and wouldn't release it until he touched his forehead. Then it's a new hunt. It's a new hunt all over again. The dog goes out, finds the bird again. He would do that and do that and do that until he got to a point where the bird was pinched somewhere and would have to go to the air. And then he was in position for the shot. Instead of chasing dogs, he's managing his dogs. And it's just a good technique. I still use it to this day.
Well, I'm learning that one. I had a guest a few weeks ago who I'd made a television show with, and I said, hey, I see your dog doing exactly what Tom just described that Jim taught. And she says, some smart dogs will figure out, well, I pointed because there was scent. The scent walked away. So game over. Let's go hunting again. So in her case, and she was a very hardcore German test judge, her dogs, they're allowed to figure it out on their own. It sounds like with Jim, you're going to work together a little bit more closely, but the same basic idea. The scent's gone. It's not a hunt anymore. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's relocate.
Well, you're right, and they do learn it. And Reagan, my current setter, he's 12 going on 13, and because I trained him stop to race, at least I like to think I trained him. They always train us, you know. But he now does it he does it as a matter of habit. He gets on a bird, and if the bird goes, he'll look back at me, but I don't have to go up and touch him. I don't have to say, okay. I mean, I often do just say, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and off he'll go, trying to pin the bird down again.
Yep.
So some dogs do learn it, but it's just repetition. You do it enough times, and you don't have to do it anymore.
Well, speaking of doing it, what is one of the big mistakes most of us, and I consider myself one of these kind of dilettante rough grouse hunters. I don't get to do it near enough, and I'm always probably walking in the wrong direction and looking for the wrong habitat. What is the biggest mistake many of us make?
I think it's how we approach a dog on point, Scott. I had to learn this through experience. When you approach a dog from his blind side, where he can't really see you, or from behind, where he has no idea where you are other than the sound of your footsteps, you get that dog nervous. And that can cause a breaking of the point. Yeah. It can cause all kinds of problems. You want to approach a dog from an angle where the dog knows where you are at all times. Yeah. And coupled with that is you don't want to shoot a gun over a dog's head, especially a young dog. I had a German short hair. In fact, he's still out in my kennel now, that I almost ruined because I fired at a woodcock over his head, over his point, and he just went crazy. It scared him so bad that he wouldn't point for a while. And I had to hand him over to a trainer named Dennis Sakowitz from the Upper Peninsula, and he trained that out of him. But it took some doing. It took a few birds. It took a couple of months, and it cost some money. So I think those two things in tandem are big mistakes that we make.
No, I can't agree more, and I've seen that, and I've learned that. A friend of the podcast and friend of mine, Bob Ferris, who trains poodle pointers primarily out here in the West, reminded me many times that once the dog hits the point, it's not instinct anymore. It should be an obedience drill. And the only way the dog understands that he needs to be obedient is if he knows that you're in the picture. Yeah. So swing out wide, and he sees you, even if it's just out of the corner of his eye. But he understands, okay, the boss is here. I better be on my best behavior.
Yes.
And then then all that other stuff you talked about, shooting over a dog and that sort of thing. Absolutely. What about when it comes to habitat? I'm a newcomer. I'm in Wisconsin, or I'm at Grand Rapids, Minnesota. What am I looking for out there?
Well, you're looking for microhabitat. It's just like if you go into a cornfield that's still standing, where will the birds be? Probably at the end in one corner or the other by the time they flush. So you're looking for the pieces of habitat. It's easy to walk into a whole 100-acre clear cut of aspen and think, well, where would they be? Where would they be? Well, you know what? If I walk in there, I'm looking for the changes in habitat. I'm looking for, it could be a thornapple tree. It could be, a seam of pines in that sea of aspen. You look for the things that don't seem to fit in the habitat. A lot of times you'll find birds there, and especially along the edge where there's compromise between, this cover and that cover. They like those edges. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Do you change strategies in one way or another from the early season to the late season?
Well, if I do, I suppose that I do it out of habit. I need to think about that one a little bit. I do change where I hunt. First of all, I don't like hunting the early season. In Michigan, that means green hell. All the trees still have their leaves, the deciduous ones at least. And it's so hard to shoot a bird through that, straining your shot through that foliage. So it's a lot more fun when the leaves come down and you can see a bird out there 30 yards, which is about the limit of range for me. Any bird. So anyway, I do hunt differently. I don't know if I hunt slower, faster. I hunt the habitat.
Yeah.
And my dog will do what I do. If I'm, walking real fast, he'll hunt fast. If I'm tiptoeing, he'll slow down. And that's all because dogs should be trained to look for you. You shouldn't be looking for your dog. Your dog should know where you are at all times. And they not all of them do. And those are the ones that are kind of renegades. They go off on their own, they hunt on their own, they could give a hoot about you. So the dogs that I have, when I've had people train them, I've always trained them to hunt close.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that dog lacing my boots than over there hunting in the next township.
What is close to you, though? I mean, define that for a rough grouse hunter.
Well, close to me depends on the habitat.
Okay.
Actually, right. If it's real thick, if it's a thick alder bottom, and I'm looking for woodcock, if that dog is 20 yards in front of me, it's too far. If he bumps a bird, I'll never see it.
Yeah.
So I want him stitching my shoes.
Yeah.
I want him right there, like he can be 10 feet, 20 feet.
Yeah.
Now, if we're out there on the prairie, I don't care if he goes a quarter mile. It's okay. I can see his point, and he has to find those birds in that big sea of prairie grass. So it depends on the habitat more than anything.
And we always argue this in NAVDA. We always suggest that a good versatile hunting dog can adjust their range, depending on the habitat. And so the same dog that's at 20 yards or 15 yards in your grouse woods there, Tom, you're taking that same dog over to North Dakota and hunting sharptails with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I've had dogs that do that. My Reagan hunts like that. I had a dog named Sherlock that was an incredibly good dog.
I remember reading about him quite a bit.
Yeah, and he did the same thing. But I've also had dogs that don't know how to do that, don't care to learn how to do that, or maybe aren't smart enough to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, you think you can train that, or is that inbred?
No, you can train it.
Yeah.
And I'm not a professional trainer, but I know how professional trainers think.
Yeah.
And the devices they use, you can train it with a check cord.
Yeah.
That's what Tim Fox does. And then you can follow up with an e-collar if necessary.
Yeah.
You never want to poke a dog unless he's done something wrong and he knows what he's done is wrong. Then you can give him an electrical poke to correct the behavior. But you can train that, Scott. I'm sure you can.
Okay, reach into your hunting vest. You're out there. Reach into the back of your car. And what is Tom Huggler going to use for a shotgun, for a choke, and for an ammo size?
Well, what are we hunting?
Okay,
different for sage grouse.
Let's try rough grouse.
Rough grouse. Okay. That's going to be a 28 gauge. Almost exclusively I hunt with a 28 gauge. And I'm not sure why. I guess it's more challenging. I guess it's an odd gauge that most people don't hunt. I know I pay more for shells.
Yeah.
But I love that bore. I just love it. And so I have two 28 gauges. One is a very fancy 101, Winchester 101 that's actually pigeon grade. Real nice gun. It doesn't look nice now because I beat it up. But over the years, the one I favor now is a fitted gun, and that's an AYA number 2, made in Spain. And I was fitted, so that gun fits me like a well-tailored suit. And that it helps me shoot better. It also gives me confidence that I can shoot better because the gun fits.
Yeah.
So it's just like a guy who's standing up to give a lecture and his suit is 2 sizes too big, and he's conscious about it, but he's not confident in giving the speech. He's focused on that instead.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. The other thing, okay, for grouse, you asked. Okay, I would start with 7.5 because early in the season, grouse are usually near or close to woodcock, and I don't want to shred a woodcock with a round of 5s or 6s. later in the season, when the woodcock are gone and the foliage is gone and the shots tend to be a little longer, then I'll go to a 1 ounce load of 6-shot, usually for rough grouse. So I don't change tactics so much as I change firepower. And that too depends on the habitat.
How do you choke your gun?
Well, I'm always shooting a double barrel, so
Yeah.
I've got 2 chokes, and I like IC, improved cylinder, because many of the shots are close, but I also like modified in the second barrel. And sometimes I think my gun may be bored to be improved modified.
Yeah,
Is such
yeah,
a thing.
yeah.
I know the barrels are 29 inches long on both my guns, and they're choked. Of course, I can change choke tubes on the 101. But the AYA was pre-bored to those specifications.
Yeah. That seems to be kind of where I go. I probably change tubes once or twice a year, and that's about it. Just don't see that as, again, it's all about that confidence thing. When I'm fishing and I'm not catching anything, I tie on a gold-ribbed hare's ear, and then I just cast straighter.
Yeah, you have to be fluid with your options.
Yeah.
So when I'm hunting preserve pheasants, I'll use my 28 gauge because the flushes tend to be closer. I go for headshots, and you just have to look at that little painted head, not at the big body with the long tail. It's got your attention.
So that's what I'm doing wrong.
You got to paint through those birds, Scott. Get out front of that head.
Yeah, I've read about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've probably written about it too, because you know what I'm talking about. You've hunted enough.
I think there's a magazine series in shooting advice from a guy who still can't get it right. So. Well,
there is. I'm sure there is. Yeah. So the thing, let's talk about lead briefly. I know we're probably running out of time. Yeah. I've heard guys say through my whole life, well, you didn't lead that bird enough. You got to be out there the length of a school bus. That bird was going 80 miles an hour. No. Start behind the bird, paint through the bird, and when you reach the leading edge, the head, pull your trigger and keep swinging.
Yeah.
You'll get that bird 9 times out of 10. You just have to cancel out the rest of the bird, just the head. And you'll get it.
That's great advice. I've never thought about it quite that way. We're learning constantly, and I'm taking lessons, and I am about using this move, mount, shoot method. And Vandy Fiedler at Mid-Valley Clays has been really good about teaching me that. And the key to that is move, don't stop moving.
Yes.
So some people call it swing through. You use the term paint. They're all good and they all work. If only all those trees weren't in the way.
You have to ignore them. That's where luck comes in.
I'm still working on that.
I've buried more shot in birch trees than I care.
Yeah.
I care to recount.
Well, I did.
Just forget that.
I did the Rough Grouse Society National Hunt one year, and the trophy that's on the wall after that trip is an alder trunk. Square, hit it right in the beak.
I've shot a limit of those too.
Well, we could talk all day, and we'll do it again sometime. But let's leave with probably the most important question. I save it for last for a guy like you because I know I'm going to have to make notes and memorize your answer. Tom Huggler, known to everybody who's ever lifted a shotgun or chased behind a dog. What is the thing you love most about this whole game of bird hunting?
It's easy for me to answer. I've written about it a number of times. Yeah. It's the drama involved. There are 3 players in this drama. There's a dog, there's a bird, and there's a man or a woman. And they all fit together. There's with the pointing dog, there's I'm trying to think of the word from English. An opening, a prologue. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
The prologue is when the dog gets birdie. If it's a pointing birdie, of course it's going to point. If it's a flushing dog, that tail's going to go nuts. Okay, the climax is the bird's flush. The anticlimax, if there is one, the epilogue, is when you fire your gun and either hit or miss the bird. Doesn't matter. You saw the flush, you saw the dog work, you took a shot, and if there's a second epilogue, it would be the retrieve. If you hit the bird and the dog brings it back. But all of this is drama to me, and it's what makes bird hunting the fun sport it is. It's the reason I go out there.
Spoken like a great writer. Good job. And I did write it down. So, okay. So don't sue me if I use that somewhere down the road.
No, you're allowed to use it.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom Huggler, for being such a great guest. I enjoy every time we see each other or talk to each other. And it's too bad we're so far away, or we'd probably be spending way too much time driving down old tote roads looking for grouse and woodcock.
You know, you're one of the few people that I haven't hunted with that I'd like to. And I wish we could make that happen, Scott.
I'm flattered, and there's always next season. So stay in touch, stay healthy. Again, thanks for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. That's Tom Huggler. I'm Scott Linden. You, rest of you, stick around. Tom, I'm going to cut you loose. Enjoy the rest of your day. And the rest of us, we've got more to talk about, and it's coming up right now on the Upland Nation podcast. So let's start with just reminding you one more time. We got that new segment. Handle It is what I'm calling it. It's all about bird dog training and in the field stuff that we could do better. And that's all because you asked about it. But first, we're brought to you in part by Pointer Shotguns. They're available right now. Yeah, they're doing a better job of bringing in inventory and getting it down the pipeline to their retailers than anybody I know of. They're constantly getting new inventory. So if you need a Christmas gift for a newbie, want to upgrade your own shooting situation, go to pointershotguns.com, find a nearby retailer, take a look at the models, watch some of my videos and articles, get ready for that new side-by-side. It's on the way. And put something really cool under the Christmas tree for him or her or you. pointershotguns.com. Well, you asked for it, and that's why we do the Upland Nation Index survey. You tell me what you want to learn about, and I'm going to do my best to help you. That's why we had Tom on the show. That guy is a wealth of information. Go out and get his videos, buy 1 or 2 or 20 of his books. He would appreciate that, and you would too, because you will learn. But I'm going to do my own bit here when it comes to dog training tips, hacks, and suggestions, maybe just some observations so that everybody's a little bit more aware. And that's, kind of the premise for all this. Just think about these things. Watch your dog a little bit more closely, and maybe something good will come of it, including the fundamental premise. What do we call him? A bird dog. He lives, breathes, and if you're not careful, sometimes he eats birds. That's his reason for living. So you're in the field. All the training is done for the season. You shoot a bird, finally shoot a bird in my case. It falls down. Dog goes and gets it just like he's supposed to. He comes back. Remember, he's a bird dog. He comes back, and the first thing you do is take his reward and stuff it in your vest. Now, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand if he's like Flick, he likes to gnaw on it, soften it up a little before he gets, but unless it's too bad, why not let him hold that bird for a minute or so? Yeah, unless something bad is happening to that bird, why not let him just enjoy the smell, the taste of those feathers, and even the texture on his tongue? I mean, for a dog, isn't that what it's all about? Give him a little bit more positive reinforcement. Just a suggestion. Works for Flick, worked for every one of my other dogs. Yeah, let him hold it. You want more of that kind of stuff? It's at findbirdhuntingspots.com. Just click on the tab that says Your Bird dog. Lots of tips from me and some of the folks I've learned from, including people like Tom Huggler. And with that, thank you for listening. Sure appreciate all your feedback at the social platforms. If you took the Upland Nation Index survey, yeah, that stuff is what makes this podcast and the TV show and everything else I do possible, because I know what you want to know, and I'm going to do my best to convey it to you. If you leave a rating or a review, that'll add another listener to the podcast, and isn't that a good thing for all of us? And then thank you finally for all the support that our sponsors have given us over the year. Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays, Trulock Chokes. Hey, thank you so much for making it a great 2022. I know between now and when we talk next, we have a big holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy the holidays for what they really are about, friends and family, including your dog. Be safe out there. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.